I've been meaning to do this video for a while. And I started a channel, and I haven't told you this. This is the first time I'm telling you in front of the camera. And I started a channel called Artist Psyche. The whole purpose of it is to go around and interview artists, not about who they are, not about what they're doing, because I feel that for the most part, whoever is following them, they already know that part. I want to get into the mind of that artist and how they think, because I feel like there's a misconception about like what artists go through, and I kind of wanted to tap into that. And there's going to have a list of questions. We don't have to go through them all, but these are questions that really, I think it helps unpack the whole purpose of the channel, which is getting into the artist's mind.
Okay.
So I'm going to start off with the first question is, what does art mean to you? Like your art that you do, not art in general, the work that you do, what does it mean to you?
The work that I do, so there's two sides to it. You know, there's the content side, which basically it represents who I am as an African American in society and the nuances of the social climate of the things that are going on within society today. That's what my content work means. But then there's another side that's more of the elegance of art, and that's where you get the como se vas and, you know, just the different palettes of me drawing figures and using material and having more regal work. And that side is more of like the freedom, the mental freedom of just expression and a release of who I am, you know, things that I've gone through in my life and things that I enjoy and I value, and also to the contrast of just experiences that I've gone through in life and tying them in together. So it can be.
So it's in a ways, it's like, it's not even just, there's even within that question, there's like multiple
layers
that you can impact, right? Like depending on, and I would assume it's like depending on the type of work that you're doing and how you're feeling, like those are like fitting into some of those categories that you're talking about.
Yeah, and then, you know, I could be doing both sides of it, you know what I mean? The content work and just the artistic, aesthetic appeal. You know, both of those pieces could be synchronized. They could be going on at the same time.
Where do you think the urge to create art comes from?
Just from, for me personally, it comes from wanting to be just more than a person existing in this world. Wanting to actually make an impact on people and being remembered when I'm not here. That's it's about legacy and, you know, in some ways, you know, immortality. You know, with my work, I'll live forever.
That's right.
You know what I'm saying? So.
What are some of the mental challenges you faced in being an artist?
The stresses of everyday life outside of just creating, you know, and that could be from, you know, I'm a father of 3, you know, and all my kids, they range from different ages, you know, so they're all going through something different. From, you know, my oldest child just graduated, so now he's stepping out into the world. To I have one daughter, you know, who's a teenager, you know, dealing with her emotions. And, you know, it's funny because when I talk about my daughter, whenever people ask me what's my most complex relationship in the world, and I always say my relationship with my daughter, all the way down to, you know, me having a toddler and just trying to.
Why do you think is it a friction per se, or why do you think that exists?
it can be a friction, just because of, me and her mother not being together, and, the beginning of her life, I was there every day, and then, the influences of just her curiosity and getting answers from one side, and then, and then me trying to steer her in the right direction, but only being able to do that part-time, and just being a protective parent, being a protective father. She's my only girl, right. So, and she's becoming a young woman, and then also too with having my own issues with my upbringing and just certain ways that I have been taught and paths that I've walked or whatnot, and then personal experiences. It doesn't always. It's not always easy, and just being able to communicate and learning how to communicate also. And then you have to have resilience, on both sides. Kids are resilient, but, also too, they have a longing for certain things. It could be attention, it could be love, it could be answers, you know what I mean, to questions that they have within their own personal space. Because I've been there. I've been in that space. And then resilience as far as like, as a parent, still, being frustrated and still needing and understanding that you have to get past your personal feelings because you're still molding this individual that is in a few years going to go out into the world on their own, and then I have a toddler too, and who watches everything that I do, and molding him and instilling certain characteristics in him and getting him to have a certain understanding, so, but when you're dealing with like just that's away from art.
And that's just like a percentage of the dynamic of your entire life,
right?
Throughout your day and everything that you're doing.
Right. But the thing is, like, I'm always a parent.
That's right.
That never stops. You know what I mean? Like, I could step away from art, but I can't step away from being a parent.
That's right.
So...
You'll always be the father of three.
Exactly. I'm LaMonté French when I'm in the studio or in a gallery or in front of a collector, but I'm always daddy. They could call right now and it's going to be dad or daddy. And, in that moment, like, you're not being creative, you're being a parent. Art is selfish. Being a creative is selfish because you're pouring what's inside of you onto the canvas. When it comes to being a parent, you're at the mercy of how they're feeling, what they're going through, whatever that may be. It could be me calling them and say, how are you doing? I still have to filter that.
It's not always about them reaching out to you.
Yeah. And then, like I said, just everyday life, relationships and dealing with someone else's emotions and being considerate of, what they need. Those are hurdles. Those are challenges because in a way I have to be an extrovert in that space, and I'm not an extrovert. I'm an introvert. I spend a lot of time alone with my own thoughts and my own emotions. So that in itself is draining. So I have to figure out the balance of that.
And when it comes to the selfish side, does it get to a point where you lose track of it and someone needs to say, hey, you need to do this?
Yeah.
Because you're spending too much time painting and
Yeah. And then even in those moments, sometimes I am selfish because I'm like, okay, well, I can't give you this at the moment. But then within me still being LaMonté French, I have to say, okay, I got to step away from this to tend to care about this person.
Right.
You know, whereas, you know, when it was just me,
Yeah.
you know, it was, I have this time to do whatever I want or whatever I feel. Even when I put the paintbrush down, I could still be, there's nothing to go to,
Right.
you know, but, you know, and then with that comes, you know, you're cohabitating with somebody. So with that comes, you know, paying your bills and your day-to-day, you know, things like that. The responsibilities of just being an adult.
Taking your son to school.
Yeah, exactly. You know, making sure he has what he needs to just survive in this world, you know. And then, you know, just the responsibilities of life. Those things, they seep into, you know, your day-to-day agendas. And that's a big challenge. The past, I would say, 3-4 years, that part has been, it's been up there. It's like my top 2 challenges.
How do you navigate the fine line between creativity and self-destruction?
Whew. My family, you know, they balance that out. Because if you don't, sometimes you have to look and see, okay, I got to be mentally okay for them so that I can be there and function for them, you know, my
So let me
kids.
pause there. Even for that, like, does that even require, like, some type of like preparation? Like, okay, I'm about to go do this. Take a deep breath and like show up.
Yeah.
Or is it just?
Yeah, it's like preparing for like a meeting, you know, in corporate America, or preparing to step onto a court or a field, you know, and that's why I like to have my studio away from my home, you know, because when I leave this space, now I'm daddy.
And even the drive back home
Yeah.
is maybe getting yourself mentally prepared
Yeah.
to like transition from like LaMonté French to a dad.
Yeah, and it's I would say the crazy part is like coming to the studio, you know, I spend a lot of time driving in silence. But when I get to the studio, I can just be in the space. It could take however long to get ready to, you know what I mean, to do whatever it is I'm doing. If it's cutting paper, if it's conceptualizing, if it's reading a book, writing in my journal, painting, working on a piece or whatnot, that's all done within that space. But then stepping outside of that space, I have to mentally prepare to be at my best as far as just being a natural human being. And because you have to be at your best, because I have to be at my best, I can't fall into the perils of like what I'm working on or those things, you know, just because none of that matters to them.
Right.
So
They just care that you're there and you're showing up.
yep.
How does music inspire or influence your artistic process, if at all?
You know, that can be multiple layers. You know, I can listen to Reasonable Doubt and I could see everything and relate to it, from being on the block to hustling to trying to put together, you know, a cohesive collection, to, you know, all of these different moving parts. You know, or I can listen to alternative music and ride a guitar riff. You know what I mean? And to where it just, you lose everything, all your inhibitions, and then you just pour whatever, body motion to.
Do you feel that, like, for an example, the guitar riff example, like a guitar riff could be coming along and you're into it and you're looking at your painting. Do you think that influenced where you go next in the painting? Like the pulling in from what you're feeling with the song or a solo, or is it just there to just hype you up a little bit and get into your
No, it's kind of like Jackson Pollock, when he would paint, he was like, it's a subliminal thing. You know what I mean? It just kind of takes over you. You know what I mean? It's not necessarily you're putting that rift into the painting, but it's just like, it's almost like smoking a joint. You know, it just kind of takes over your inhibitions, and you become free within that space.
What do you want your legacy to be?
Influence. I want my work to be able to influence society. I want it to be able to show artists that you can do and control who you are as a creative on your own. You don't have to necessarily be inside of a box of a genre or wait for somebody to give you something. And I want to be the example. I want people to go to my career and say, look at how LaMonté French, his career was. Look at the moves and the decisions that he made based upon doing things on his own terms. And he was successful at doing it. You know, and I, you know, when people talk about artists that come out of Houston or Texas, I want to be in that conversation.
What's the earliest memory you have experiencing with art?
Drawing my dad in his uniform.
How old were you?
Probably 4, 5, 6, 7. And
Did he see it?
Huh?
Did he see it?
Yeah.
What was his reaction?
His his reaction to me would be like, "Thank you." And I always tell this story. I remember one time he asked me, he was like, "Why do you draw the same picture of me all the time?" You know, and as a young kid, I was kind of like, I don't know. You know, but I would draw him in, you know, because you have home and away jerseys and different colors and things like that. And I would notice, like, the detail of him in his uniform as he's playing. And then I would go, and that week I would draw it. And I might draw it like 4 or 5 times. And I remember I went to practice with him on a Saturday, and I was kind of being mischievous and digging through his locker. And I looked in his hygiene locker, was this little small locker. And he had every picture I had drawn of him in his locker. He kept all of them.
Man.
Yeah.
When you first told me that, it felt like you weren't maybe expecting the reaction that you wanted him at that time when you gave it to him. But you felt it later when you went to the locker.
And that always stuck with me. The fact that
Just got goosebumps.
The fact that he kept, and I'm leaning like not 1 or 2, like he had a stack of every picture I had drawn of him. So, you know, for him to actually take that piece of paper and remember, because my dad would go to practice at like 5:30 in the morning, to remember to put that in his bag, take that to practice with him, put it up, and then go about his business. You know what I mean? The detail and how much he cared about it.
Right.
That's what it spoke to me. You know, and then later on, you know, my dad was also my coach. You know, so the time that he spent just instilling certain things into me, all of that went into those things. I get a little emotional, you know, because my dad's sick now, and you know, and he's been, you know, my emotions about that have, you know, I've put into a few paintings, but just to hear the conversations that him and I have, and like the things that he remembers, and you know, certain things that he talks about, how proud of, like he tells me that I've always been articulate, you know, and he talks about, he always tells this one specific story about me playing the lead role in my 5th grade play. And I remember he came to the play, and it was just kind of like nothing to him. You know what I mean? It was just like, all right, whatever. And he never said, man, you did a great job or nothing until I was like an adult.
Oh, wow.
And he's always like, man, the way that you played that role. And, you know, he always talks about like how I can imitate people. And
do you feel that like, I'm sure you would wanted to hear that at that time that happened, right?
But that's the thing, like, my grandfather was a World War II veteran. He was a really hard man. And he didn't really express his emotions, and my dad wasn't that way. And not until like I got older, and he was, again, my dad was my coach from the time I was 9 to the time I graduated high school. And we were like side by side. So it was more emotion as I got older, where we were like in the trenches of battle. But that's what he knew. He knew how to go to battle with people on a Sunday, or, you know what I mean, when it pertained to teams. He knew his role, so he taught me those things. So that was our connection. And, you know, years and years later, you know, when I was in my 30s and, you know, he was in his 50s, we got a chance to even coach together, you know.
So at those times, that's when you really was able to bond with your dad.
Well,
right?
It's funny because when I was older, I understood how we bonded when I was younger. You know, and it's, you know, my dad has his own demons, you know, and they kind of affected our relationship as, you know, I was an early teenager or whatnot. And it was times where I hated my dad, you know, but those moments that we were able to share together, that's what kept our relationship alive, you know, pretty much, because that's what we always rode on. We always went back to that connection, that relationship.
But right now, where is that?
My dad is always, like, he's always been my hero, you know. One thing I can say about him, why I love and respect him so much, is growing up, my dad always told me, you know, you don't make no excuses for nothing you do. If you did it, then you stand on that. If, you know, you suffer the consequences, then you suffer the consequences. If the reward is great, then it's great. And it goes back to like sports. You know what I mean? Like, if you're the superstar player, you're gonna get all the glory when you win. But also too, you're gonna get all the blame when you lose. So if you wanna be in that spotlight, you gotta be ready to take both sides. And as an adult, when I had my son, my first son, I went back and I had a conversation with my dad, you know, and it was some, you know, I threw some F-bombs out there, and, you know, I spoke my piece. And he never said, well, I didn't do this, and, well, this is the reason why. He sat there and he took it. And so basically for me, he stood on what he taught me. I can respect that. Because it's, you know, I always know where you're coming from, and you're always coming from that space of what you instilled in me. You know,
he walked that talk.
Yep. But going back to the basis of the question is, my first time being able to remember art is drawing in my dad in his uniform.
Does he still have those drawings?
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know.
It'd be cool if we can check it out.
Yeah, I don't know. You know, life has gone so many different ways.
You guys moved too a few times.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. And then, you know, my parents aren't together anymore. I know he has like some of my touchdown balls from like college and pictures of me and stuff like that. And it's kind of cool to see like his memorabilia from like when he played and stuff like that. You know, but then also too, the caveat, you know, I still remember like my mother dressing me for funerals, like down to a T, to like designer socks and, you know, matching blazers and stuff like that. So, you know, she's a big influence as far as like the fashion side. You know, I remember like going to Neiman Marcus and watching her shop around with the personal shopper and putting together outfits and dressing my dad, you know, for traveling and stuff like that. So it's, I guess in the totality of it, my earliest memory of art would be my parents.
Is now that you're saying that about your mom, did this piece of the story that you just told me, did that influence Como Se Va a little bit? No, because I know you had the swans.
As it pertains to fashion,
Yeah.
as it pertains to fashion, my mom is the biggest influence of fashion, for me. She is like, from even just how to match a belt to shoes, you know what I mean? Or wearing certain colors on certain holidays, putting a penny in my penny loafers, things like little bitty things like that.
So you've always been thoughtful of how you dress.
Yeah.
Because of that.
Mm-hmm. And it's funny because, at one point in time too, we didn't have a lot of money. So me struggling and wearing hand-me-downs or my clothes not being like to the top of fashion, in a sense, I was conscious of that too. You know what I mean? So, it just, I think our childhood is what kind of molds us. And mine definitely did. So.
Have you ever explored the dynamics of love, loss, or connection in your art as a means of processing or understanding your own relationships?
More so in like writing in my journals. If you read my journals, it's a lot of it pertains to like my relationships with women, different experience I've had with women. I have specific excerpts and writings about specific women that I've loved, because I haven't loved many. Dealings with women that I've been emotional with, and then just, women that have passed by. I write about those specific experiences. I wouldn't necessarily say they've come out in my paintings. I haven't dwelled to where I've, I guess maybe one. My fiance, there was a painting about her in Como Se Va, to where I wrote an entire journal entry that I had about her. I put that in a painting, and it just kind of tells the story of how I met her and how we ended up falling in love. That's probably about it. It would be more so in like my specific words in private sectors of, me being a creative.
What has your work taught you? Your art.
That your brain has no boundaries. And if you reach a plateau, you can go past that. Because all you've done is you've set a standard for yourself. So you have to try to outdo yourself from a mental standpoint. If I'm fast and I can run to that light pole in 10 seconds, that means I could do it in 9.
There's always room for improvement in some ways.
And you can do it. You can get to that better place every time. But you have to push yourself.
I have a lot more questions, but I'm going to ask you the last one. And I already know the answer to it because I know you well.
Okay.
So let's see if I was right. What do you want written in your tombstone?
I'm just a Creole kid from Houston, which means I'm maybe not all of this, but
Yeah.
the gist of it is, I'm no different from anybody in any walks of life. My parents, they just allowed me to dream in color. And in depth, I always say that, but in depth, it just means that they allowed me to think freely, you know, and they protected me. You know, they didn't always have the right methods, I would say, or, you know, they were going through whatever they were going through also, but they kept my mind in a safe place to where it could be free, and I was always aware that I could achieve anything that I wanted, but I had to put the work in. But the culture of who I am, you know, my grandfathers are both military veterans. One has a Purple Heart, one fought in the Korean War. And, you know, my grandmother on my mother's side, I was the last baby that she got to see, grandchild that she got to see. And, you know, that's who I am to the root of me, you know, and that's why I say I'm just a Creole kid from Houston. Because everything that I put, you know, you could look at my paintings, it's just a pot of gumbo, you know. And then, you know, as you let the seasoning sit in, it just gets better and better. So, you know, on my tombstone, to take all of that in quotations, you know, just put, my parents allowed me to dream in color.
Before we wrap it up, what's next for LaMonté French? What's going on that you can share?
You know, just trying to, my prayer always is, let me take it to the next level. You know, so what's next for LaMonté French is just trying to take this work to the next level.
I mean, the space is the next level.
Yeah, we 19,000 square feet, man. Yeah, we've come a long. I've come a long way.
I know.
So, and I'm grateful. I'm blessed for that. I'm blessed, you know, to have people that have supported me on my team. I'm grateful to be able to have built a team, you know, with you, and, you know, to where it's like it's established. You know, everyone knows Elise Art Group is my management. That's who you got to go through to get to me. I have international gallery representation. You know, we're putting together a documentary and a book. It's just, you know, my biggest thing, man, is execution.
That's right.
So it's just continue to execute, being a creative, you know, that's always what's next. That's the best way I could put it, just execute being a creative. You know, not talking about it, but actually putting the footwork in and just making phenomenal work, man. Anybody can make good work. You know what I'm saying? But you make phenomenal work, that means, you know, I make work for the people that don't love art.
Shit.
You know what I mean? If I can get somebody who don't understand art, who that's not really their thing, who doesn't love it, I can get them to stop and look at my painting for 10 minutes and even attempt to break it down, then that means I've made a phenomenal piece. Because I've stopped you from your day-to-day rhetoric.
Right.
You know, so.
Well, man, thanks for your time.
Right on, brother. Yes, sir.
All right.